Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Spin, Shuffle, Skip on the There Can Only Be One podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. One of the things I really like about the show format of this show right here that you're listening to is that we get to talk about albums that we don't normally get to talk about on There Can Only Be One. There are many a time where a song that a band has released only on a soundtrack would actually qualify as my only one for that artist. But because I am evil to myself and I made the rules of There Can Only Be One the way they are, I don't get to pick that song. Enter Spin, Shuffle, Skip and the ability to talk about soundtracks, and sometimes I get to talk about the songs I would really pick on There Can Only Be One were they available. And today is one of those days, because we're talking about Avengers Assemble, music from and inspired by the motion picture. We're talking about the very first Avengers film. And here to join me down this road is my other Avengers teammate. Alex Whistle's back. How you doing, man?
I am great. Avengers Assemble. Let's do it.
We had to wait till Endgame for him to say that. That was a long, long wait. Worth it. Totally worth it. So, Alex, when we were preparing our round of recordings for the show, this was the album that I got to toss at you. Did I do a better pick this time?
Yeah, I would say so, because honestly, I went kind of on an adventure listening to this. It's a lot of bands that I normally wouldn't listen to regularly. So, I'm discovering a lot of stuff here. And a little bit about myself too, what I like and don't like. So it was really nice.
This was the thing that I loved about soundtracks, especially in the 90s, because the 90s was when soundtracks were like just peak, absolute peak. Is that you bought the soundtrack because you liked the song in the movie, and maybe there was one or two other ones that were on there. But then there were other songs where it's like, I've never heard of this artist in my entire life, and now I get to actually hear you start to deep dive. You start to discover new artists through soundtracks. I wish soundtracks were more of a big deal in the year of our podcast 2024, but 2012 served us with something really good when it came to the Avengers. No, this is not the Alan Silvestri score. This is songs that were from and inspired by the motion picture. I should put a star on the from. I say that because there's only one song on this album that appeared in the movie, and the rest were all inspired by the film. So let me get to the details of the album here. The album was released May 1st, 2012 on Hollywood Records. There were two singles released from this: Live to Rise by Soundgarden and Come Back by Red Light King. Live to Rise hit number 1 on the US mainstream rock charts and the Canadian rock charts. Come Back, which was also on the Red Light King album Something for the Pain, hit number 18 on the US mainstream rock charts. The album itself hit number 1 on the US hard rock album charts and number 2 on the Billboard soundtrack album charts. The only song from this album that appears in the movie is Live to Rise by Soundgarden, but you do have basically a who's who of rock in 2012. This is a fantastic album and very underrated. Like, there are songs on here I wish were in there, and really one of the franchises that didn't necessarily play into the soundtracks. The Transformers movies, they had some great, fantastic soundtracks and really leaned into them. Avengers could have done that a little bit more, but I like what they did. You can't really argue with what the Avengers did because they kind of changed filmmaking. So I'm not going to criticize Kevin Feige and crew. So, they know what they're doing. I think they know what they're doing. The box office tells me they know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I wish soundtracks were definitely a bigger thing nowadays, because I think there was a point in time when I was trying to go through all of my records and even CDs, and the amount of soundtracks I had over proper studio albums. I was just taken back. I'm like, wow, I should really do it, like you said, like a deep dive on these soundtracks for each individual artist. And I think that's kind of how I grew my collection throughout the years. And I do wish that the Avengers movie itself would have had more of these songs that they used on the soundtrack or on this soundtrack because I don't know, maybe there's something more that we just don't know about Marvel and maybe music rights to be put in the movie. There's so much blah 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 in the background when it comes to publishing, right? So
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at the first Iron Man film and how much, AC/DC was in there as well. So, kudos to them for that. And then you had the Guardians of the Galaxy, which kind of took like almost the Tarantino approach. Well, now we can call it the James Gunn approach to soundtracks because, he did the same thing for the Suicide Squad. So that was good. And then now with Deadpool and Wolverine, it's a very, specific to that movie soundtrack, which, those songs are there, but there's nothing really new on that soundtrack. It's all older tracks that were released prior. Admittedly, you get to rediscover a bunch of them, but I love when soundtracks brought new stuff to the table. This was definitely that. So now we're going to start with our spin pick. So Alex, I'm going to toss it to you. Off of the Avengers Assemble soundtrack, what's your spin pick?
My spin pick was Unbroken by Black Veil Brides. Honestly, this soundtrack specifically was a tough listen for me because my first listen through, I went, man, I feel like I'm listening to, this is going to sound really mean, but I feel like I'm listening to a lot of B-sides from these artists because I'm familiar with enough of these people that I'm like, it's not what I'm used to listening to. So it took a couple listen throughs to really come up with a solid answer. But I always went back to Unbroken as something that I was like, oh, this is, yeah, no, I would definitely play this first if I had it or if I knew the band going into the store buying the soundtrack. I would definitely play that first off every time.
I mean, I can see that. I mean, with the Black Veil Brides, I mean, I know like one or two songs from them. I'm not, as familiar with their discography. I really, really like the song that they put on this album. So, this is one of those situations where, this is a great opportunity or at least a gateway drug, if you will, for listeners to sit there and go, I really like this song. Let me hear more from them and see if it's, kind of what you expect.
Hey there, busy parents. Christian Swain here, the rock and roll archaeologist. I know just how stressful family dinners can be, from planning and shopping to actually getting everyone to enjoy what you made. But I've got some good news for you. HelloFresh totally gets it too. They're making dinner easier and more enjoyable with fresh ingredients and recipes that even picky eaters love, delivered right to your door each week. I've been using HelloFresh for a while now, and let me tell you, their new Build-A-Plate meals are a game changer. Imagine not having to make multiple dinners to satisfy everyone's tastes. And with so many options, each member of my family gets to build their perfect plate from just one meal. No more, I don't want this at the dinner table, just happy faces and clean plates. Plus, with HelloFresh, I don't have to worry about meal planning or grocery store runs. Their easy-to-follow recipes with pre-portioned ingredients save me so much time, especially now that school's back in session. And here's the best part. Right now, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/PantheonKids to unlock this exclusive offer. That's one free kids meal per box for 2 months while your subscription is active. So, what are you waiting for? Head to HelloFresh.com/PantheonKids. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Have you ever thought about something new you'd love to learn? As adults, it's easy to get caught up in the daily grind, and sometimes we forget to make time for new experiences. Remember when we were kids and learning was part of everyday life? Now it feels like we're always in work mode. But what if we could tap into that curiosity again? Whether it's learning how to garden, picking up a new language, or finally beating your friend in your fantasy football league, there's so much out there to explore. Therapy can help you reconnect with that childlike sense of wonder. I know for me, therapy has been a great way to learn about myself, set healthy boundaries, and develop positive habits. It's not just for times of crisis. It's about growing and becoming the best version of yourself. I know I am more in tune with both my positive self, which I highlight, and my negative self, which I'm working to minimize since I began working with my BetterHelp therapist. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, BetterHelp is a great option. It's fully online, so it's convenient and it fits around your schedule. You'll fill out a quick questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. And if it's not the right fit, you can switch at any time with no extra charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/pantheon today and get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/pantheon.
I went with a different direction for my spin pick. I ended up going with Breathe by Scott Weiland. So here's the thing. When Scott Weiland puts a song on a soundtrack, it's going to be awesome. He proved that with Lady, Your Roof Brings Me Down from the Great Expectations soundtrack, one of my personal favorite soundtracks from that era. And he did it again here. I mean, there is something really hauntingly good about this song, especially when you know that, Scott Weiland didn't have, long for the world after this album came out. And, we still miss his music to this day. So when you go back and you listen to some of these lyrics and you're like, this is almost like in retrospect, kind of haunting and a nice little, it's not necessarily a swan song, but it's definitely something that you sit there and go, you wonder if he was trying to say something with these lyrics, but it's a fantastic song. And if I were ever to do a Scott Weiland solo discography, there can only be one. This song, if it were on an album that I could talk about, would definitely be the only one pick from Scott Weiland. It's actually my favorite solo track from him.
Damn rules.
I know, right? I make these shows. I make these shows, and then I have to, play the game myself, and I apparently I don't like myself. But yeah, like the fact that he passed away 3 years after this album came out, like, go listen to Breathe and go read the lyrics and sit there and go, wow, like this is a fantastic song. Then we get to my shuffle pick, and we get another one of those bands that I had never heard this band before listening to this CD, and that's Shake the Ground by Cherry Bomb. You mentioned that some of the songs felt like B-sides, but when you get those newer bands, this is when they're putting their A-grade stuff on there, because this is their chance to really steal the show. It's like when an opening act comes out, and then they put on this fantastic set, and then like the headliner comes on, and you're like, oh, I like the opening band better.
Yeah.
Cherry Bomb really, really brought it on here. Like, freaking love the song. It's fantastic. By the way, if you've never heard of Cherry Bomb, they actually only released one album as Cherry Bomb, and then they rebranded and they became Hey Violet. They actually released an album back in June of this year, 2024, and also announced that they were breaking up. So here's another band with just 3 albums, and then you have to, we can't talk about them on there, can only be one. But, when I go and do a deep dive, and I'm going to do a deep dive on Cherry Bomb / Hey Violet, if the rest of the songs are as good as Shake the Ground, trust me when I say I'm going to be pitching one of these albums for a Spin Shuffle Skip, because this song is fan-freaking-tastic. And really, if it wasn't for the fact that I really love Breathe by Scott Weiland, this would have been my spin pick. But I knew right away that Breathe was my spin pick. This made the shuffle so easy.
I kind of feel the same way for my pick, actually, but I think it's not the same way. I feel the same way as in, like, if my spin wasn't there, this would have been my spin, but for different reasons. My shuffle was I'm Alive by Shinedown.
How did I know Shinedown was going to be one of your picks?
Well, funny enough, so this too, it took me a couple listens to really like it, because being a fan of Shinedown and hearing this, I can confirm that this is definitely a B-side style track when it comes to their music. It was in between Sound of Madness and Amaryllis, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe just around the time that Amaryllis came out, just based off of the production and the vocal styles. But it didn't go as hard as, what they did for the Expendables with Diamond Eyes. And, but then you listen to this and you're like, okay, sure. It kind of goes with the Avengers, but the Avengers, the movie went freaking hard. And, when I see these names, I expected a lot harder music when it comes to like a soundtrack representation. But all in all, I was really happy with it. I listened to it and I go, yeah, that's Shinedown. Love it.
Yeah, this album actually came out just a little, over a month after Amaryllis was released. So that gives you like the perfect framing on that. I mean, trust me, that song was in the running for my shuffle pick, but it wasn't to me as, maybe it wasn't as fresh as Shake the Ground was. And that's the thing, there are certain soundtracks where my spin pick will be a band that I had never heard before. And I'm thinking of one, but I'm not going to say it because I know somewhere down the road I'm going to cover that album on this on this show because it's that freaking good and needs to be talked about. But now we get to your skip pick. So what did you go with?
It was a real toss-up for me between the song Comeback and Into the Blue. And the only reason why spoiler alert for everybody out there, my skip is Into the Blue. But before I explain why, the only thing that saved Comeback from being my actual skip was the melody, because it's the same melody as What Is Love by Hathaway. And I went, oh man, I love this. I could definitely like,
I need to go back and listen to that now, and then I'm not going to be able to unhear it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. But yeah, no, my skip was Into the Blue by Bush. And it's so funny. So I listened to this album, I think 5 times in a row, just to make sure that my picks were solidified, that I had that I was set on what I wanted to pick. And funny enough, I was doing editing while I was listening to it for the last time. And when I got to Into the Blue, all I kept thinking to myself was, man, I really don't like this song. I should put this as my skip. And I went to my list and there it was already on there. And I had a good laugh.
It's funny. Of the 2 songs that you picked, they were both actually in the running for my skip as well. And I also settled on Into the Blue by Bush. So let me explain why it's on here for me, because I like Bush. I really do. Don't take that out of context. But, going back to all the way back to 16 Stone, Bush knows how to put out a fantastic freaking song. This song, this is very much, it feels like the definition of that B-side. The vocals are way too upfront in the chorus. The mix doesn't do anything for this. And the song just kind of feels very middle of the road. It does feel like a song that was probably written around an album session. They're like, yeah, no, it's the weakest of the group. And then, well, we'll give it to a soundtrack and that's okay. And, there are times when that happens and you sit there and go, well, the song was fantastic. Why didn't it make the album? Here, I'm like, no, it makes sense. And as much as I like, the band, as much as I like the discography that they've put out, and I can't wait to go see them live this summer as they tour with Jerry Cantrell and with Candlebox. I can't. It's my skip pick.
I am not a fan of Bush. You can interpret that any way you like.
Wah, wah, wah. All right, Alex, please remind our listeners what your spin, shuffle, and skip picks are from the Avengers Assemble, music from and inspired by the motion picture soundtrack.
So my spin was Unbroken, my shuffle was I'm Alive, and my skip ultimately was Into the Blue.
All right, for me, my spin was Breathe by Scott Weiland, my shuffle was Shake the Ground by Cherry Bomb, and my skip was also Into the Blue from Bush. Alex, thank you so much for this. Please remind our listeners where they can find you out there on the interwebs.
Well, if you like music, and if you're listening to this, I'm sure you do.
Well,
check me out.
my listeners, they don't like music. Why would they listen to this show if they like music?
But yeah, if you like music, go check me out on YouTube at AC Official Music Page, or you could always stalk me on Instagram at Photographs by AC.
And dear listeners, do know I appreciate you, every single one of you. You guys are awesome. All right, Alex, thank you. And to you, our listeners, you guys know the drill. If there's an album that you want us to cover on Spin, Shuffle, Skip, or an artist that you want us to cover on There Can Only Be One, hit us up on social media at OnlyOneCast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out our Coming Soon page so you can chime in on all the episodes that we are planning on doing in the future. Until next time, he's Alex. I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is Spin, Shuffle, Skip on the There Can Only Be One podcast channel, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.